The human diplomatic shuttle crossed Asterian's upper atmosphere beneath a canopy of violet lightning. Through the observation window, Ethan Carter watched enormous cities float above silver forests, each supported by rings of blue gravitational fire. He had seen strange worlds before, but none that looked as if an entire civilization had been designed by architects who refused to accept the existence of gravity. "Do they ever build anything on the ground?" he asked. The pilot glanced at the glowing cities. "Apparently the ground is considered unfashionable. That explains Earth's poor reputation." No one laughed. The rest of the delegation had been silent since receiving the palace report. Princess Elyna was dying. The shuttle landed on a transparent platform extending from the royal citadel. Beneath Ethan's boots, clouds moved thousands of meters below. He tried not to look down while alien guards approached in polished white armor. They resembled humans, except for their long, elegant ears and the faint lines of light running beneath their skin. The guards bowed and guided the delegation inside. The palace should have been magnificent. Golden machines drifted beneath the ceiling, adjusting temperature and gravity with silent pulses. Holographic constellations rotated between crystal pillars. Small cleaning drones polished the floor so aggressively that Ethan nearly slipped twice. Yet the halls felt empty. There was no music, no conversation, and no sound from the gardens surrounding the central tower. Even the machines appeared subdued. A service robot passed Ethan carrying a tray of untouched food. Its display showed a small digital face with downturned eyes. "Is the robot sad?" Ethan whispered. Ambassador Hale gave him a warning look. The robot turned its screen toward them. "I am programmed to reflect the emotional atmosphere of the palace." "That must be exhausting." "It is unbearable." The robot continued down the corridor. At the throne chamber, Queen Nythera waited beside a window overlooking the floating capital. She looked almost human, though her long ears curved gently through her silver hair. Her face remained controlled, but exhaustion had left shadows beneath her sapphire eyes. The ambassador bowed and began reciting the official greeting. "Your Majesty, on behalf of the United Earth Systems." "Thank you for coming," Nythera interrupted. Her voice carried no anger, only weariness. The ambassador stopped so quickly that his ceremonial tablet continued speaking without him. "We offer friendship, cooperation, and sincere appreciation for the refreshments provided during." Hale slapped the device silent. The queen did not appear to notice. She moved toward a circular table where a holographic image of a child hovered above the surface. Princess Elyna had inherited her mother's silver hair and long ears, though hers drooped slightly at the tips. In the recording, she chased a floating mechanical creature while shouting that it had stolen her dessert. The creature protested, "I possess no digestive system." "That's exactly what a dessert thief would say," Elyna replied. The image vanished. Nythera's fingers remained over the empty light. "My daughter collapsed 19 days ago," she said. "Her body is healthy, her heart is strong, yet she does not wake." Human doctors had already studied the reports during the journey. No infection had been detected. No toxin had been found. Elyna's neural activity showed repeating patterns that resembled signals rather than illness. Could something be communicating with her? Ethan asked. Every alien in the chamber turned toward him. The ambassador closed his eyes. Ethan cleared his throat. "I'm not a doctor. I repair navigation systems. I mostly communicate with engines, and they rarely answer politely." Nythera studied him. "Our scientists considered external contact. They found no transmitter." "Maybe they were searching for a machine." One of the royal physicians stepped forward. "What else would transmit a signal?" Ethan looked toward the living crystal walls. Light moved through them like blood through veins. "Your entire city is connected to a planetary energy network. Perhaps the signal isn't coming from a device. Perhaps it's coming from the planet." The physician's expression hardened. "We have studied this world for 10,000 years. Then it has had 10,000 years to learn how to hide things from you." Silence followed. The ambassador leaned toward Ethan. Your diplomatic technique resembles falling downstairs. But I'm reaching the bottom efficiently. Queen Nythera turned toward the doors. Bring him to Elyna. The ambassador blinked. Your Majesty, Lieutenant Carter is not part of the medical team. No, the Queen replied. He is the first person today who has spoken about my daughter as though she is still alive. They entered the highest tower of the palace, where guards stood outside a sealed chamber. Inside, Princess Elyna lay beneath a field of golden light. Machines surrounded her bed, projecting streams of symbols into the air. Ethan stopped near the doorway. She looked impossibly small beneath the medical field. Several doctors adjusted instruments, whispered to one another, and finally lowered their heads. One by one, they began shutting down their equipment. What are they doing? Ethan asked. Nythera did not answer. The chief physician approached the Queen. Her neural signal is weakening. We have exhausted every treatment. The Queen's face remained still, but her hand tightened around the edge of her cloak. The doctors left. Then the advisors left. Even the guards withdrew when the council summoned Nythera to an emergency session. Before leaving, the Queen looked back at her daughter. For a moment, she was no longer an empress commanding hundreds of worlds. She was only a mother standing beside a bed, terrified that the next goodbye might be the last. Her eyes moved to Ethan. You may go. He pulled a chair closer to Elyna's bed. I think I'll stay. This chamber is restricted. I've already violated 3 palace rules today. 4 would give the visit a sense of completion. Nythera stared at him. Why? Ethan looked at the sleeping princess. Because everyone keeps leaving. The Queen's expression broke for only an instant. Then she turned away and walked toward the doors. They closed behind her, leaving Ethan alone with the child and the quiet rhythm of alien machines. He sat beside the bed. I should warn you, he said softly, I'm terrible company. One of the medical monitors emitted a sudden tone. Ethan looked at it. A new wave appeared across the display. For the first time in 19 days, Princess Elyna's fingers moved. Ethan leaned closer to the bed and watched Elyna's hand. For several seconds, nothing happened. The golden medical field continued to hum, and the monitor displayed the same narrow wave it had shown since he entered. Then her smallest finger moved again. He stood so quickly that the chair fell backward. The sound triggered 3 security drones hidden in the ceiling. They descended with weapons extended and surrounded him in a perfect circle. I'm not attacking the princess, Ethan said. One drone scanned the fallen chair. Furniture assault detected. The chair attacked the floor. Your explanation lacks credibility. Ethan pointed toward the bed. Her hand moved. The drones turned toward Elyna. Their weapons retracted at once. One projected a red medical alert across the chamber while another contacted the palace network. Within seconds, the doors opened. Queen Nythera entered first, followed by physicians, guards, advisors, and Ambassador Hale, who appeared to have been dragged from an argument with the royal council. What happened? Nythera demanded. Her fingers moved, Ethan said. The chief physician reached the bed and examined the monitors. I see no meaningful change. They moved twice. Muscular reactions can occur without consciousness. Ethan looked at the man. Do muscular reactions usually happen immediately after someone says they are terrible company? The physician ignored him. Nythera approached her daughter and took Elyna's hand. Her face remained calm, but hope had already entered her eyes, and Ethan knew that hope could be more dangerous than despair. Despair expected nothing. Hope gave pain something sharp to hold. Elyna, the Queen whispered, can you hear me? The child did not respond. The medical team increased the power of the neural scanners. Silver symbols appeared above the bed, forming a rotating model of Elyna's brain. Most of it glowed blue, but near the center pulsed a tiny sphere of black light. Ethan had not seen it in the reports. What is that? The physician dismissed the image with a wave. An unclassified neural shadow. That sounds like a scientific way of saying you don't know. It means the scanner cannot interpret the region. So you don't know. Ambassador Hale quietly stepped between them. Ethan has a rare gift for turning cooperation into a survival exercise. Nythera's attention remained on the black sphere. Why was I not told about this? The physician hesitated. It appeared 4 days ago. We believed it was a malfunction. On every scanner. No one answered. The Queen's long ears angled backward, a gesture Ethan had already learned meant anger. Leave us. The physicians began protesting, but Nythera raised one hand. The medical equipment obeyed her authority code before the staff did. The chamber sealed, and every scanner disconnected from the palace network. Only Nythera, Ethan, Hale, and the princess remained. The black sphere continued pulsing above Elyna. Ethan moved around the hologram. Each pulse sent thin lines of energy outward through the child's neural map. They were too regular to be random. It's repeating, he said. Hale examined the pattern. Repeating what? A sequence. Ethan transferred the signal to his wrist computer. The device struggled to process the alien frequencies, emitted a warning, and displayed a message. Unauthorized biological language. That's encouraging, Hale said. It could have said exploding biological language. That is not as comforting as you think. Ethan adjusted the translator and converted the pulses into sound. At first the chamber filled with static. Then the static became a low rhythm, almost like a distant voice hidden beneath an ocean of interference. Nythera froze. Play it again. He increased the volume. The sound repeated. 3 short pulses, 2 long, 1 short. The Queen stepped away from the bed. I know this sequence. From where? Ethan asked. Nythera looked toward the walls as though the palace itself might be listening. It is an old royal distress code. It was abandoned before Elyna was born. Could she have learned it? No, the code was erased from the Imperial archives. Hale glanced at the sleeping child. Then someone placed it in her mind. The chamber lights flickered. The black sphere expanded. Elyna's body stiffened beneath the medical field, and every machine began displaying the same symbol, a circle broken by 7 vertical lines. Nythera whispered something in her own language. What does it mean? Ethan asked. The Gate of Vera. Hale frowned. A place. A myth. The floor trembled. Outside the tower, the floating city's gravitational engines shifted out of alignment. Warning sirens spread across the palace as buildings began drifting from their assigned positions. Ethan looked at Elyna's neural map. With all respect, Your Majesty, myths usually don't interfere with city engines. The black sphere sent out another pulse. This time, the walls answered. Lines of white light appeared across the chamber, connecting the bed to the crystal structure of the palace. The signal rushed outward into the city, then down through the atmosphere toward the planet. Ethan understood it at once. Elyna was not receiving a message. She was transmitting one. The Queen gripped his arm. To whom? Before he could answer, Elyna's lips moved. Her voice was weak, almost inaudible. Don't let them open it. The black sphere vanished. The lights stabilized. Elyna became still again. Nythera bent over her daughter, calling her name, but the child did not wake. Ethan looked at the symbol remaining above the bed. 7 lines. 1 broken circle. Somewhere deep beneath Asterion, something responded with a pulse powerful enough to shake the entire palace. And for the first time, the planetary network sent a message in a language every translator understood. The gate has heard her. For several seconds, no one moved. The message remained suspended above Elyna's bed in cold white letters. The gate has heard her. Ambassador Hale read it twice, as though the second attempt might produce a friendlier meaning. It could be a translation error, he said. Ethan checked his wrist computer. The system translated it into 43 languages. Perhaps all 43 are pessimistic. Queen Nythera turned toward the sealed doors. No one outside this room must know what we saw. A warning tone answered her. The chamber's security display showed the message spreading through the palace network, appearing on medical screens, service drones, transport panels, and even kitchen appliances. Hale looked at the display. The royal toaster knows. Nythera closed her eyes. Then we have approximately 6 minutes before the council declares a religious emergency. Why 6? They argue efficiently when frightened. The doors opened before she could issue another command. Chancellor Vareth entered with 12 council members and a squad of armed guards. He was tall, narrow-faced, and dressed in ceremonial armor that seemed designed by someone who deeply mistrusted comfortable clothing. His gaze moved from Elyna to the broken circle symbol. The prophecy has begun. Nythera stepped between him and the bed. This is not a prophecy. It is an unexplained neural event. Vareth bowed slightly. Your Majesty, the same symbol has appeared beneath 7 cities. Ancient power chambers are activating. The planetary core has increased output by 11%. Then send engineers. We sent engineers. And they requested priests. Ethan folded his arms. That is rarely a good sign. Vareth ignored him. The Gate of Vera was built before our species recorded history. The first queen sealed it because something beyond it could influence living minds. The royal bloodline has always been the lock. Nythera's expression changed, not surprise, recognition. Ethan noticed it immediately. You knew. The queen looked at her daughter. I knew fragments, stories passed from mother to daughter. I believed they were warnings meant to frighten young heirs into obedience. Hale nodded. Human monarchies used ghost stories. Yours apparently used interdimensional prisons. We have always preferred scale, Nythera said. Vareth approached the holographic display. The princess is the final heir. If the gate is calling through her, it means the seal is failing. Or someone is forcing it to fail, Ethan replied. The Chancellor finally looked at him. This matter does not concern humans. The child spoke while I was beside her. A coincidence. The city nearly fell from the sky. A dramatic coincidence. Ethan smiled without humor. You sound very committed to coincidence. Nythera raised a hand before Vareth could answer. What does the council propose? The Chancellor hesitated only briefly. The princess must be transferred to the Chamber of Silence. The Queen's eyes hardened. No. It will isolate her from the planetary network. It will also suppress every neural signal in her brain. It may save the Empire. It may kill her. No one spoke. Vareth lowered his voice. If the gate opens, millions may die. Nythera moved closer to him. The silver lines beneath her skin brightened, and every guard in the chamber lowered his gaze. You will not turn my daughter into a sacrifice and call it mathematics. The Chancellor bowed, but his expression remained unchanged. Then we must find another way before the next pulse. As if summoned by his words, the floor shook again. This time, Elyna's body lifted several centimeters above the bed. The medical field collapsed. Black light spread beneath her skin in thin, branching patterns, moving toward her heart. Ethan reached for her, but an invisible force threw him backward. Nythera was pushed against the wall. Guards raised their weapons, then hesitated when they realized their target was an unconscious child. Excellent discipline, Hale muttered from the floor, very reassuring. The hologram above Elyna changed. A map of Asterion appeared, showing 7 points of red light across the planet. Lines connected them deep beneath the surface, meeting at a single location under the Northern Ocean. The gate. Then an 8th point appeared. It was not on the planet. It hovered above the palace. Ethan looked toward the ceiling. Something is coming. The chamber windows darkened automatically as the orbital defense grid activated. Outside, hundreds of weapons platforms turned toward a distortion forming in the sky. Space folded inward. A vessel emerged without engines, exhaust, or visible hull seams. It resembled a black shard suspended inside a ring of blue fire. The palace scanners tried to identify it. Every screen returned the same answer. Origin, beyond VYRA. Vareth stepped back. That is impossible. Ethan pushed himself up. I'm beginning to dislike that word. A beam of pale light descended from the vessel and struck the tower. The chamber filled with static. Elyna opened her eyes. They were no longer silver, they were completely black. She turned her head toward Ethan. "Human," she whispered, "they found me." Nythera rushed to the bed, but Elyna raised one trembling hand. "Don't let the council take me below." Vareth's face lost all color. The princess looked directly at him. He already promised them the gate. Every guard in the chamber turned toward Chancellor Vareth. For the first time since entering, the Chancellor looked uncertain. Queen Nythera stepped between him and Elyna. "Explain." Vareth glanced at the black vessel beyond the window, then at the symbol still burning above the medical bed. "There is nothing to explain." Ethan pushed himself upright. "That sentence has never improved a situation." The Queen's voice hardened. "My daughter named you. She is ill. She has been unconscious for 19 days, yet somehow found the strength to accuse the most irritating man in my government." Ambassador Hale raised one finger. "For diplomatic accuracy, he is not the most irritating man in the room." Ethan looked at him. "I appreciate the support. I was referring to you." Vareth moved toward the door, but the security system sealed it before he reached the threshold. Nythera's authority sigil appeared across the metal. "No one leaves," she said. The Chancellor's calm expression finally broke. "You do not understand what is coming. Then help us understand. The gate is not a prison." Ethan looked at Elyna. Her black eyes remained fixed on Vareth, though each breath seemed to cost her strength. "What is it?" he asked. Vareth lowered his voice. "A bridge." The black vessel sent another pulse through the palace. The windows vibrated. Outside, defense platforms fired streams of blue plasma, but each blast curved around the alien ship and vanished into its ring of light. Hale watched the weapons disappear. "At least we are providing them with free energy." Vareth continued. "Our ancestors came through the gate thousands of years ago. They were refugees fleeing a civilization called the Veil. The Queen sealed the bridge to prevent the Veil from following. Nythera's long ears angled backward. The royal histories say our people evolved on Asterion. The histories were rewritten. By whom? By your bloodline." The Queen did not answer. Vareth touched a control on his wrist. A hidden archive unfolded above his palm, projecting images of ancient ships emerging from a white rupture beneath an unfamiliar sky. Long-eared figures carried children through burning corridors while enormous shadows moved beyond the gate. "The Veil created our species," he said. "They altered us to survive different worlds. We escaped when they began using royal minds as living navigation systems." Ethan looked toward Elyna's neural display. "The repeating signals." Vareth nodded. "Royal blood can locate the gate across dimensions." Nythera stared at him. "And you awakened it." "I opened a narrow channel. You used my daughter. I tried to contact the Veil before the seal failed completely. I believed negotiation might save us." Hale studied the black ship. "They appear to have answered with a warship. That vessel is only a messenger." The chamber became silent. Ethan glanced through the window. "I was hoping it was their smallest and most cheerful tourist shuttle." Elyna suddenly gasped. The lines of black light beneath her skin brightened. The vessel above the palace rotated, and a beam began cutting through the tower's defensive field. Nythera rushed to her daughter, but the medical monitors flashed a warning. External control increasing. Ethan moved to the central console and linked his wrist computer to the palace network. "What are you doing?" Nythera asked. "If the gate uses her mind as a navigation system, we need to interrupt the route." Vareth shook his head. "Any forced disconnection could destroy her memories. Then we don't disconnect her." Ethan opened the palace's gravitational controls. Thousands of equations flooded the display. "We give the signal another destination." Hale leaned closer. "Can you do that?" "No." "Excellent. But the ship thinks Elyna is the strongest royal signal on the planet. If we create a louder one, it may shift its focus." Nythera understood first. "My neural pattern. You are her mother. Your blood should carry a similar signature." Vareth stepped forward. "The Veil will enter your mind. They are already inside hers." Ethan connected the Queen's biometric field to the planetary network. The palace resisted, warning that royal consciousness transfer required the approval of 7 ministers, 2 physicians, and 1 ceremonial historian. Hale stared at the message. Why the historian? To make certain the disaster is properly recorded, Nythera replied. She placed her hand on the console. Override all restrictions. The system obeyed. Silver light surged from the floor and wrapped around her body. The black vessel immediately redirected its beam toward the Queen. Nythera cried out as images flooded the chamber. Burning worlds, endless fleets, and millions of pale figures standing inside a city beyond space. Elyna's body dropped gently onto the bed. Her eyes returned to Silver. "Mother," she whispered. Nythera fell to one knee but kept her hand against the console. The ship's signal tightened around her mind. Ethan began rerouting it through the palace engines. "Hold on. I am a queen," Nythera said through clenched teeth. "Holding on is most of the job." The gravitational rings beneath the city shifted. Instead of supporting the palace, they focused upward, compressing space around the black vessel. Vareth realized what Ethan intended. You cannot fold a ship back through its own dimensional wake. Ethan forced the final control into position. That sounds suspiciously like encouragement. The palace released a violent gravitational pulse. The black vessel bent, stretched, and vanished into a point of blue fire. Every light in the tower went dark. For several seconds, only Elyna's breathing could be heard. Then the princess reached out from the bed and touched her mother's hand. Nythera looked up. Elyna's eyes were open, truly open. "Did we win?" The child asked weakly. Ethan checked the silent scanners. "For today." Elyna gave him a tired smile. "That is not a very heroic answer. I repair engines. Heroes have better uniforms." The little princess laughed once. It was a small sound, fragile and breathless, but after 19 days of silence it filled the entire chamber. Nythera pulled her daughter into her arms. The Queen tried to speak, but no words came. Her shoulders trembled. Then she began to cry. Nythera held Elyna so tightly that the medical field began warning her about restricted breathing. "Your Majesty," the chamber system said, "the patient requires oxygen." The Queen loosened her arms at once. Elyna looked up at her. "You nearly defeated the Veil and me in the same minute." Nythera laughed through her tears, then pressed her forehead against her daughter's. No one else spoke. Even Vareth remained still beneath the eyes of the guards. For a moment the palace, the council, and the danger beyond Asterion seemed far away. Then every screen in the chamber turned red. Planetary seal failure, 21%. Ethan looked at the warning. So much for today. Elyna's smile faded. They are still inside the gate. Vareth lowered his head. The messenger ship was not trying to invade, it was marking the path. Nythera released her daughter carefully and stood. "How long before the Veil can open the bridge?" "I do not know." One of the guards tightened his grip on Vareth's arm. Ethan stepped closer. "That means he knows." Vareth looked at the floor. Hale sighed. "Chancellor, I have spent 27 years in diplomacy. Silence is useful only when the other person is too polite to threaten you. We are not feeling polite." 6 hours, Vareth said. Nythera turned toward the chamber windows. Beyond them, the floating capital had begun to move out of formation. Blue gravitational rings flashed beneath towers while emergency craft filled the sky. "Evacuate the northern cities," she ordered. "Move the civilian platforms beyond the equatorial shield." A royal officer touched his wrist display. "That will require approval from the council." Nythera looked at him. The officer swallowed. "I have suddenly remembered that it does not." Command spread through the palace network. Ethan returned to Elyna's bedside. The girl remained weak, but her eyes followed the holographic warnings with unsettling focus. "You can still hear them, can't you?" he asked. She nodded. "What are they saying?" "They are promising that no one will be afraid again." Hale frowned. "That sounds almost pleasant. They mean no one will be able to feel fear." The room grew quiet. Elyna touched the side of her head. The veil do not understand feelings. They remove them when they become inconvenient. Nythera's face hardened. That is why our ancestors fled. Vareth gave a small nod. The veil believed emotion made their creations unpredictable. Royal minds were designed to control entire populations through the gate. Ethan glanced at the princess. And Elyna is the strongest royal mind born in generations. She can command the bridge, Vareth said, or destroy it. Nythera stepped toward him. You knew this from the beginning. I knew she might be able to close it, and you allowed them to enter her mind. I believe the Empire needed the gate. Our border systems are failing. 3 colonies are starving. The Council has hidden the reports. Hale looked at Nythera. Is that true? The Queen did not answer immediately. Our empire is weakening, she said at last. But survival purchased with my daughter's mind is not survival. Vareth lifted his gaze. If the gate is destroyed, we lose the technology beyond it forever. Ethan smiled coldly. You opened an interdimensional door because you wanted better equipment. I opened it because billions depend on this empire. And now billions may lose the ability to decide whether they like it. The floor trembled again. A new hologram appeared above the bed. This time, it showed the northern ocean boiling around 7 enormous rings rising from beneath the water. The gate of Vaera was surfacing. Nythera looked at Elyna. Can you close it? The child's long ears lowered. Yes. Ethan did not like the way she answered. What happens to you? Elyna remained silent. Nythera knelt beside the bed. Tell me. The gate recognizes royal thoughts. To close it completely, someone must enter the central link and remain until the bridge collapses. Remain where? Inside. The Queen's face became empty. No, Mother, no. I can hear the structure. I know where it is weak. You are a child. I am the key. You are my daughter before you are anything else. Elyna's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained calm. If they cross, there will be no daughters, no mothers, no one will love enough to cry. Nythera turned away as though the words had struck her. Ethan studied the gate's energy map. 7 rings connected through a central chamber beneath the ocean. The bridge depended on a continuous royal signal, but the signal passed through the palace network before reaching Elyna. An idea formed, a very bad idea. Hale saw his expression. I know that face. What face? The face you made before folding an alien warship through itself. That worked. It also removed part of the palace roof. It was an unnecessary roof. Ethan expanded the neural map. The gate needs a royal mind, but perhaps it doesn't need a living one. Vareth stared at him. A synthetic consciousness cannot reproduce royal genetics. No. But the palace has recorded Nythera's neural pattern, Elyna's signal, and every pulse sent by the veil. Nythera understood. You want to create a false heir. A temporary one. A quantum copy convincing enough to enter the bridge and collapse it from within. Elyna looked at the palace core displayed above them. The copy will wake. Ethan nodded. It may. And it will know it is going to die. No one answered. The palace intelligence suddenly spoke through the chamber. I have reviewed the proposal. Hale looked toward the ceiling. Were you listening? I am the palace. Listening is difficult to avoid. Can you create the copy? Ethan asked. Yes. The lights dimmed, but I require one mind to guide it through the gate. Nythera stepped forward. Ethan shook his head. No, you do not command me. I'm beginning to notice. The Queen looked at her daughter, then at the rising gate. I will guide it. Elyna reached for her hand. Nythera held it. The palace began constructing the false consciousness. Above them, silver light gathered into the shape of a young girl. She opened her eyes and looked around the chamber. Then she smiled at Elyna. Hello, sister. The false princess stood within the silver light and studied every face in the chamber. She looked like Elyna, yet her movements were too precise, and her eyes carried the faint glow of the palace core. Thousands of calculations passed behind them each second. Elyna stared at her. You look like me. I was constructed from your neural pattern. That sounds less flattering. The false princess considered this. I can also imitate your laughter." She produced a flawless recording of Elyna's laugh. Elyna frowned. "That is unsettling." Ambassador Hale nodded. "At last, someone has expressed the official human position." The palace intelligence projected the gate's structure above the bed. 7 rings had risen completely from the northern ocean. Between them, space twisted into a white corridor filled with moving shadows. The Veil were gathering on the other side. Nythera placed both hands inside the neural interface. Silver threads wrapped around her wrists and connected her mind to the false princess. "What will she feel?" the queen asked. "Everything you allow her to feel," Ethan said. Nythera looked at the copy. "Then she must not enter the gate alone." The false Elyna tilted her head. "I am not alive in the biological sense. That does not answer the question." "No." The queen's long ears lowered slightly. "Then you are alive enough." The interface activated. Nythera gasped as her consciousness entered the artificial mind. The copy's silver form became solid, then dissolved into a stream of light that passed through the floor and descended toward the planetary network. Ethan followed its progress across the hologram. Signal accepted. Vareth stood between 2 guards, watching in silence. The gate opened wider. A voice emerged from every speaker in the palace. "Return the air." Elyna gripped Ethan's hand. "They think the copy is me. That is the first good mistake anyone has made today." The false princess reached the central link beneath the ocean. Through her eyes, the chamber saw an impossible city beyond the gate. Towers stretched in directions that space should not allow. Millions of pale figures stood motionless beneath a black sun. At their center waited a vast intelligence made from connected minds. It spoke through Nythera. "You were created to obey." The queen's answer shook the palace. "Then you created badly." Ethan almost smiled. "That sounded royal." "It sounded like her," Elyna whispered. The Veil seized the artificial mind. Black energy poured through the link, trying to rewrite it, but the copy carried something they had never designed into their royal creations. Choice. Ethan had inserted random human memory fragments into the neural pattern: laughter during failed repairs, embarrassment, fear, loyalty, and every irrational decision that had brought him to Elyna's bedside. The Veil tried to process them. The gate began to stutter. Hale looked at the collapsing equations. "What did you give it?" "Human emotional logic." "That is not logic." "Exactly." The Veil network faltered as contradictory impulses spread through it. Protect and attack, fear and advance, love and surrender. For a civilization that had removed uncertainty, one compassionate human's memories were an infection. The false princess reached the central core. She looked back through Nythera's connection. "Mother, I am ready." Nythera's face tightened. "You do not have to call me that." "I know." The artificial girl smiled. "I chose to." She closed the bridge. The 7 rings cracked at once. White fire erupted across the northern ocean, but the planetary shields absorbed the energy and redirected it into the sky. The black sun beyond the gate disappeared. Veil voices became static, then silence. The false princess began to fade. Elyna stepped toward the hologram. "Will she be gone?" The palace intelligence answered softly. "Her independent consciousness cannot survive the collapse." Nythera reached through the neural link. "Come home." The copy shook her head. "If I leave, the gate may follow." For the first time, fear appeared in her glowing eyes. Elyna touched the hologram. "You were brave." "I learned it from you." "No," Elyna replied. "You decided it yourself." The false princess smiled once more. Then she vanished with the gate. The 7 rings sank beneath the ocean. The palace fell silent. Nythera collapsed and Ethan caught her before she struck the floor. Elyna called for her mother, but the queen opened her eyes moments later. "Is it closed?" she asked. Ethan checked the planetary network. "Completely." Vareth lowered his head. "I was wrong." Nythera stood with Ethan's help. "You endangered my daughter and the Empire. I will accept execution." "No," Vareth looked up. "You will spend the rest of your life repairing the colonies you claim to save. You will see every consequence personally." Hale smiled. A punishment involving administration. Ruthless. Weeks later, Asterion began to heal. The floating cities returned to formation. The hidden reports were released, and resources once reserved for the royal capital were sent to the starving colonies. Vareth worked under guard in the outer systems. Ambassador Hale negotiated a permanent alliance, though he insisted Ethan never attend another formal meeting without supervision. Ethan remained at the palace, not as a soldier, not as a diplomat. Queen Nythera appointed him chief engineer of the planetary network, mostly because no one else had successfully insulted an ancient interdimensional civilization into defeat. Elyna recovered slowly. She learned to walk again through the crystal gardens, usually with Ethan beside her and 3 anxious medical drones following behind. One afternoon she looked up at him. "You stayed when everyone else left. I had nowhere better to be." That is not a very heroic answer. "I still do not have the uniform." Nythera approached them beneath the glowing trees. The queen no longer carried the same cold distance in her eyes. She had learned that ruling did not require hiding every fear, and Ethan had learned that staying beside someone could matter more than solving the danger around them. Elyna took her mother's hand, then Ethan's. A small service robot rolled toward them carrying a cake. Its display showed a cheerful face. "Unofficial Tuesday birthday," it announced. Ethan looked at the calendar. "It is Thursday." The robot paused. "After recent events, the palace has voted to be flexible." Elyna laughed. Nythera laughed with her. And for the first time since Ethan arrived on Asterion, the floating city no longer felt like a monument holding its breath. It felt like a home,